Chapter 947. The expression on Linda's face was filled with joy and surprise when she saw Alex. She ran toward Alex immediately as she grabbed hold of Alex's arms with both of her hands before she asked, "Brother Alex, why didn't you come back to visit us at the orphanage for such a long time?" Alex did not feel uncomfortable at all, even though she was grabbing her arms with her hands. On the contrary, he was like her elder brother, and he said affectionately, "I have not been doing well after leaving the orphanage. Therefore, I feel a little embarrassed to come back to the orphanage to visit all of you." As soon as Linda heard his words, her eyes turned red, and she choked as she sobbed and said, "Mrs. Brown told us that you have been working on a construction site after you left the orphanage. She also told us that you would always send all of your hard-earned money to her so that she could buy us books, clothes, and food. Why didn't you come back to see me at all? It has already been so many years, but I did not get to see you at all." As she spoke, Linda burst into tears as she said, "When Mrs. Brown fell ill, I heard her saying that you would always come and visit her at the hospital. However, you would always visit her after we leave. It seems as though you are deliberately hiding from us. Do you know how uncomfortable and upset all of our brothers and sisters were because you were avoiding us?" Alex could not help but sigh when he heard this. Alex had not led a good life after leaving the orphanage. Previously, he had been busy working at the construction site 365 days a year. He did not take a single day off and worked all year round. He would only keep enough money to fill his stomach, and then, he would send the rest of his hard-earned money to Mrs. Brown. The reason why he was so reluctant to go back to the orphanage at that time was because he was not doing well in the past. He did not want these younger brothers and sisters who had not entered society to see him in despair. He did not want to set a bad example for them. After he married into the Richard family and became the famous live-in son-in-law in Orris Hill, he felt even more embarrassed to go back to the orphanage. When he found out that Mrs. Brown was sick, he was even more worried and concerned about her compared to everyone else. He had always been very embarrassed to face his friends from the orphanage. Later, when he became rich, he received $10 billion from the Anderson family and had also inherited the Diamond Group. However, Mrs. Brown was not in the orphanage at that time. That was the reason why he did not come back to the orphanage. After Alex had some money, he had always been meaning to donate some money to the orphanage. He wanted to wait for Mrs. Brown to come back to the orphanage so that he could come up with a suitable reason and excuse to donate a large sum of money to the orphanage. Besides seeing Mrs. Brown, the other reason why he agreed to come and attend the welcome dinner for Mrs. Brown with everyone else today was because he wanted to see how he could donate money to the orphanage without arousing anyone's suspicion. This was also Emma's first time coming back to the orphanage with Alex. Therefore, it was also her first time meeting Linda. Emma was surprised by Linda's youthful beauty, and she also felt that Linda and her husband seemed to be a little too intimate. However, Emma quickly comforted herself. She knew that this young girl that she was looking at was a little sister who grew up with Alex in the past. Therefore, it was only natural for this girl to regard Alex as her own brother. It was not unusual for them to be this close and intimate. When Alex saw the tears in Linda's eyes, he said, "Linda, I have not been doing well in the past, so I did not want you to see me at my worst and miserable state. However, things are different now. Your brother is doing pretty well now, and I finally have the face to come back and see all of you now." As he spoke, Alex grabbed Emma's hand before he smiled and said, "Come, let me introduce the both of you. This is your sister-in-law. What do you think? Isn't she beautiful?" Emma felt a little nervous when Alex suddenly grabbed her hand. After all, even though they had already been married for more than 3 years, both of them had not had too many intimate actions. Still, she did not pull back her hand but simply allowed him to hold her hand. When Linda saw Emma, the somewhat sad expression on her face suddenly turned into an envious expression. As she looked at Emma, Linda could not help but feel a little inferior.